Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Hi there and welcome once again to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24, where weekly we shatter the myths and misconceptions about employment law and make you that much smarter in the workplace, right? We do that every week. Good to have you along. John Scholes, simply the host here. But the brains of the operation, stopping by just in a moment, it's going to be Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. I'll tell you right away how to reach out to Lior anytime. You're always encouraged to do so. With your questions about your workplace rights, that's 1-888-861-4555, the number. Email is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. On the show this evening, a little later on, we're going to get to 5 things people are still getting wrong about terminations. It's okay, there's like 500, but we've narrowed it down to 5, and we'll get to those in just a bit. Plus some phone calls from one of our live radio shows we do weekly, including here in the GTA. You can tune in and call in. Please join us Sundays at 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010. I hope we join you there sometime as well. But we always start off with the week that was to get us warmed up. Lior, how are things going with you, pal?
Employment law, John, that's what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do, to talk about that and to help as many people as possible understand your workplace rights. It's not just about knowing what your rights are. It's about helping you enforce those rights, because the law is on your side. In Ontario, we have some of the best employment laws anywhere in the world, frankly, and too many people don't know what they are, or they don't appreciate that, or maybe they just know a little bit about their rights, but that's not enough. You really have to understand the full gamut of your rights. So this is what this show is about. Whether you're worried about your job security, whether you're worried about your hours of work, whether you're worried about your severance package, or the fact that you were bullied in the workplace, we'll talk about all those things every week to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need to have if you are working, if you're facing a workplace problem. And of course, the next step you can always take beyond just the 30 minutes of the show is to reach out to me in the office, phone or email, so we can have a private discussion and I can get to work helping you. We'll give you that contact information throughout the show. But I always like to start off, John, as you just said, with a situation that just came across my desk. Well, I spoke with a lady recently. She had been with the same employer for about 5 years. Now, about a year ago, she was promoted into a managerial role. She had now several people reporting to her, and she'd been doing that for a year. Well, the company just came to her and said, well, we don't think this managerial role is working so well for you, so we're going to take away some of the managerial responsibilities that you had. You're not going to be a manager, but because we like you, you've been with us for 5 years, we're going to keep your pay the same. We're not going to reduce your pay. We're just going to take away the managerial responsibilities. Well, she then called me. She was distraught, actually. She was almost in tears, and she wanted to know, can they do that to me? Can they just promote me and then demote me a year later and take away my managerial responsibilities? How am I going to face my colleagues now? So that's what I heard from her, and here's what I told her. I said, no, they cannot do this. By changing the terms of your employment, by demoting you, that's a constructive dismissal. They're now making creating a situation that's going to be embarrassing for you to work. Everyone's going to know that you're no longer a manager, that people no longer report to you. How are you going to show up to work every day? That's not something they're allowed to do. The fact that they kept the pay the same does not change that. So this is a constructive dismissal. She can treat that as a termination of her employment, leave and get her full severance, which for her is probably about 8 months pay. But I wanted to remind everyone watching that if you're demoted, if the terms of your employment are changed in a significant way, even if your pay is not reduced, that can absolutely be a constructive dismissal. It's not something, John, that an employer is allowed to do.
Well, as we mentioned off the top, Lior, you and I have got 10 years of radio shows behind us across the country, and one of our flagships, of course, is Sundays at 1 p.m. right here in the GTA on News Talk 1010. Fantastic callers listen to the show, and they call in with their own issues. And I said we're going to play a few back during this half hour. Let's get to the first one right now and dissect it a little bit, shall we?
I booked some time off of work. I gave them about a week and a bit's notice, and they said, yeah, it's okay. Your shifts are covered. You're good to go. I went on vacation, came back. They told me I had a write-up waiting for me. The write-up said it was for not giving 2 weeks notice. I refused to sign that, returned to work like normal for another week and a half or so, and then I was taken off the schedule. They said they took me off, and they're not putting me back on until I sign the write-up. Security, between 3 and 4 years.
What do you think, pal?
Well, John, this employee clearly didn't do anything wrong. He asked for permission. The company said, yes, you have that permission to go on vacation, and then he went off on that vacation. Now, the company could have said, we're not going to approve your vacation because you didn't give us enough notice. That was absolutely their right to do. They didn't do that. They said, yeah, no problem. So by saying no problem, they approved to how he asked for a vacation, meaning he cannot be punished in any way, shape, or form. Now, because of that, they cannot put him off work. By not scheduling him, that in the eyes of the law is a termination. If you're not getting work from your employer, you've been terminated. The company doesn't have a right to just put you off without shifts, without hours, without pay. So this person has been terminated. Because he did nothing wrong, he is owed severance. So let's use our severance calculator tool. You can find it, of course, at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And let's see how much severance this person is getting. So he's been there for 3 years. He's a security guard at the age of 37. Company doesn't feel like he has to pay severance. Nonsense. You see at the bottom there, he's owed easily 3 months severance, and that's probably conservative. It could be 4, 5, even 6 months of severance because, again, he didn't do anything wrong. The company didn't have a right to do what it did. And an important reminder for you as well, if you want to know if your severance offer is adequate, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca is the place to go.
All right, good stuff, Lior. Let's take a short break and back. And when we do come back, we're going to get into our main topic, as I mentioned off the top, 5 things people are still getting wrong about terminations, but we're going to clear it all up after a short break. In the meantime, here's that number again, 1-888-861-4555 to call Lior and his team. Email anytime, even if there's something you want to bring up on the show. That is ask@employmentlawyer.ca as well. We'll take that for a quick break and back with lots more of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Don't go anywhere.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Okay, welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Thank you so much for sticking around through the break. As I mentioned way back at the top of the show, we always have a main topic every week. And for tonight, it's going to be 5 things people still get wrong about terminations. There's 1,005, but we only have a certain amount of time here. Lior and I could sit here for 6 days straight and go through this entire list. But Lior, I want to get to the top 5 anyway that we discussed. Number 1, your employer can legally let you go for many reasons, almost any reason for that matter. What do you think?
Yeah, well, 6 days may be a bit much, John, so we'll try to stick to a few minutes. But no, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of things that people need to know. And this is a big one. The fact that your employer can let you go for any reason. When people often call me because they lost their job, they're upset about the fact that the company let them go to begin with. And for example, recently someone called me because they felt that their manager let them go because they wanted to hire the manager's cousin. And that doesn't seem right, except from a legal standpoint, that can happen because your employer can let you go as long as proper severance is paid. Now, what's very important to remember that in the majority of cases, the severance that you're offered is not even close to being adequate. You're often owed many times more severance, several times more severance than what the company has offered you. But you generally can be let go for any reason as long as proper severance is paid.
Number 2 of the 5 things that people are still getting wrong about terminations, Lior, is this, that termination for cause is likely not legitimate, right?
If a company wants to avoid paying severance, they have to create a situation, or there has to be a situation you did something very bad, something so bad that the company can let you go for cause. Now, that is a very, very high standard. The fact that you did something wrong, or maybe even a few things wrong, does not mean that the company has cause to let you go. That does not mean they can let you go without severance. And oftentimes employers pull the trigger on a termination for cause well before they should. The fact that you may have done a bad job on a project, or maybe there was an issue with conduct, does not mean you are deserving of the worst punishment. They could provide other maybe punishment, a performance improvement plan, maybe a suspension, a warning, but not to let you go for cause unless you did something awful. And it could be the difference between getting no severance and getting 2-year severance. So if your company even says that they're letting you go for cause, it's even a better reason to give me a call right away.
Okay, Lior, moving on to number 3. This one may shock a lot of people, have them scratching their head, but you should not go to the Ministry of Labor when you lose your job.
Ministry of Labor, Labor Board, it seems like the natural place to go to if you lose your job, if you want to know what you're owed, if you want help in enforcing your rights. Here's why you cannot ever, ever, ever do that. Did I say enough evers? Well, the reason for that is the Ministry of Labor can only help you enforce your minimum entitlements. That's only a small fraction of your full entitlements. So they may be able to enforce 2-week severance after 2 years of employment, but your full entitlements can be 6 months severance. And by going to the Ministry of Labor, you then lose your ability, you're barred from pursuing your full entitlement. So people actually walk away from thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of severance that they're owed just by going to the Ministry of Labor. You can never, ever do that if you lose your job. If you lose your job, to pursue your full entitlements, you have to speak with an employment lawyer, so give me a call.
Again, we are discussing 5 things that people are still getting wrong about terminations. Rolling on down to number 4, Lior. Your severance is not based on what your employer wants to pay you. How about that?
That's right. Severance is dictated by law. It's not something that the company decides how much to pay. It's not something that they get to make up. There's no say. There's no discretion there. So that's why you should always remember with those severance offers, the company doesn't get to say you don't get it. Because if you're owed something, the law is going to make sure you get it. The employer has to pay whatever the law says you should get, and that's it. So you don't have to be stressed out. There's pressure tactics that the company tries to impose on you. They may make you feel like they're doing you a favor, so you better take that severance before they change their mind. They're not doing you a favor. That severance is dictated by law, and the company doesn't have any say.
All right, let's get to number 5 to wrap up the topic for this week, Lior, and that is you do not have to sign that severance package, those termination papers, on your way out the door.
On the way at the door, or really at any time dictated by the company. We talked about pressure tactics. One of the biggest one is to give you that deadline. You better sign this by Friday at 5 or you're not going to get paid. Nonsense. Your legal rights don't expire Friday at 5. In fact, your legal rights don't expire for 2 full years, 2 whole years. Now, I'm not saying wait 2 years, but that 2, 3, 4, 5 day deadline is meaningless. Take the time that you need to understand what you're being offered, to calm down, to take a deep breath, and of course, to get legal advice. Because once you sign off on that severance offer, because of that pressure tactic, there's no going back. So you can feel free to ignore that severance deadline.
As we mentioned earlier on, and we played one already, if you simply go to EmploymentLawyer.ca, we'll find a radio station near you, including right here in the GTA. News Talk 1010, Sundays at 1 p.m. Please join us on the radio. Have a chance to listen to the hour-long show and even call in and ask your questions. Want to get to our second phone call of the day right now, Lior.
I was working for this company and I got laid off. I was like there 6 years, senior, There were other younger, unqualified guys just came in like a year or 2 before, trying to get rid of senior employees because they don't want to pay the seniors more.
Wow. What do you say, Lior? What do you think?
So we have to make a distinguish here between not wanting to pay people with experience more money and letting people go because of their age. A company is allowed to let you go because they feel you make too much money and they want to pay someone less. That's not a nice thing to do at all, but they can do that as long as they pay you proper severance. But what the company cannot do, it's completely illegal to let you go because you're older, because of your age. That's age discrimination. So a company can't say or even think, well, you're too old, we're going to let you go and hire someone younger. That's a human rights violation. There's significant consequences to that. So if you feel that your age played any factor in the company's decision to let you go, you have to call me immediately.
Okay, we'll take a short pause, and on the other side of the break, Lior, we'll talk about being cut before Christmas, the old Scrooge tactic. Not very nice, but in the meantime, here's the number, 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca through email as well. Reach out anytime, and we'll continue more Ask a Lawyer right here on CP24.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
This is Ask a Lawyer on CP24. John Scholes here, and employment lawyer Lior Samfiru joining us again this week. You want to reach out anytime. The phone call's a simple way, 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca is the email address. And yes, we do radio shows, lots of them, right here in the GTA. The flagship is right there on News Talk 1010. We do that Sundays at 1 p.m. Lior and I take a ton of phone calls from you, the listeners, the viewers. Feel free to call in on our next show, and maybe it'll appear on a future TV show like this one. So give that a spin. And in the meantime, Lior, we'll get to phone call number 3 for today. Have a listen.
I was working for a company about 6 months ago. There was a new president that was brought on. Shortly thereafter, he brought in some new VPs. So I, at a director level, got a new boss that I reported to. About a week before Christmas, me and my whole team were let go. I had signed an agreement about 3 years ago when I started with full-time with the company.
Yeah, not cool at all, cool at all. And unfortunately, something that does happen, here's the thing. It's not illegal per se to let someone go before the holidays. There's nothing in the law that prevents that. But because it may be more difficult to start or to look for work during that time because no one's really hiring, that may mean you get even more severance if you're let go around the holidays. Now, we would have to see that employment agreement that he signed 3 years ago to see if it changes the analysis. But this is really a question of severance. And we know what we do when we're talking severance. We're going to go to our severance calculator tool. Of course, you can find it at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. It's free and anonymous. So let's see how much severance this person gets. So he's been there for 3 years or so. He's 56. He's in a senior role in a well-paying position. We see that he's easily owed 6 months severance. Now, that can be even more than that because he's been let go around the holidays, and it's going to be more difficult to find a job quickly. So that's why it's so important to get that legal advice. There's so many factors that go into deciding just how much severance you're owed.
Lior, I want to get to a question you had recently come across your desk. I thought this was a good one, so I want to read it out here. It says, my sister severely hurt her shoulder outside work. She made a claim for long-term disability, but was denied. They said she didn't have proper paperwork from her doctor. Where does this leave her with her employer?
Well, before we even touch on the employer, with respect to the insurance company doesn't want to pay her if they can avoid it. That's why we have a team in the office that just deals with these issues, because the insurance company should be made to pay if her doctor says she can't work right off the bat. But in terms of her employer just needs a doctor's note. Very different than the insurance company. If she has a doctor's note from her employer saying that she cannot work, that's it. That's all she needs, and her employer cannot do anything. They need to allow her that time off and to try to bring her back when she's ready to return to work. That doctor's note is your ace in the hole. It's the most powerful tool that you have. If your employer does anything to you other than do what your doctor says, you absolutely have to reach out to me. You could be looking at a human rights violation, constructive dismissal, other things as well. So always remember that doctor's note.
More questions coming up, but we'll take a first, or at least one more final break before we get to that. Lior will give you Lior's contact information too. Make that phone call anytime, 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca, or simply that website, right? EmploymentLawyer.ca as well. We'll continue more Ask a Lawyer here on CP24.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. So good to have you along for this 30 minutes. We do it every week, so tune in next week as well. I'm John Scholes, and the employment lawyer Lior Samfiru here, of course, making you that much smarter every week. He does, in addition to radio, TV, practicing law, does live streaming as well on Facebook and YouTube. You want to take part in that, stlawyers.ca, stlawyers.ca is how you do that. Okay, Lior, here's the question. I worked as an independent contractor through an agency the past 11 years, handling IT matters for numerous companies. I got a call one day from the agency that I no longer had to come into work. Should they at least have given me my ROE, my record of employment?
So here's the thing. We know that this person is not an employee of the companies that he was providing services to. He worked for a bunch of people over the 11 years, so he's not an employee of the actual companies. Well, what about that agency? Well, yes, that agency, the agency that hired him out, was his employer. And because of that, he's actually owed severance. The agency decided where he's going to go, how much he's going to get paid, whether he comes back or he doesn't come back. So because of that, he was an employee of that agency. And now, as an employee, he's been let go after 11 years. He's going to be owed significant severance. And that could be many months of pay, 12, 14, 15 months, probably in that range of severance. So you actually can be an employee of an agency if you work through that agency regularly. If they are the ones that hire you out, they're the ones that pay you, they tell you when to go and what to do on a particular day, that is an employment relationship. And if they're not treating you as an employee, that is illegal. Remember, the reality on the ground is what matters. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. Doesn't matter what someone else calls you. And we talked about EmploymentLawyer.ca. One of the tools that we have there is a tool that allows you to find out if, in fact, you're an employee or a contractor. It's free, it's anonymous, so check out EmploymentLawyer.ca.
And that is just about it for this half hour. Appreciate you so much for stopping by and asking your questions, making the phone calls. You can always reach out now that we're done anytime with Lior. Here's that phone number one more time, 1-888-861-4555. The email we always go to, ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And the website, Lior's mentioned it a couple times, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And for all other information, simple, go to cp24.com/askalawyer. And we'll catch you next week. Thank you so much.